Hey guys, Jason here with Spectrum Labs. We're doing another quarantine-specific podcast, this one with my friend Courtney Sanford, and we talked about quite a few things. First of all, Courtney is a registered nurse. She's a wellness coach. She's a CrossFit level coach, also a precision nutrition coach. So she's got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge about being mentally and physically well, which I think is a really important topic right now. So she talks about things to eat, how to think about avoiding foods or maybe not, how to move while in the small confines of your home or apartment. Just a lot of different things about mindset and just staying well while at home. So I hope that you listen and share this with anyone you think would benefit. So without further ado, here is Courtney Sanford. Courtney, thank you so much for joining me on the Hemp Startup Journey today. We are not talking about hemp at all. Let's see, just a quick intro to folks that will be watching or listening. Typically, we talk about the business and the industry of hemp and cannabis, and we're right now, beginning of April the 2nd, I think it is. I don't even know what day it is anymore.
Yeah. Close enough. We're good.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It's been hard for me personally to think about the industry and the business of what we do. So I figured that something for me personally to do is to take some sort of action. And with this podcast specifically is just to give some folks that listen to us or watch us some sort of actionable advice or suggestions from experts. And so with you specifically, I've known you for a few years, and you're really good about taking stock of overall health and wellness. And so hopefully we can talk about some of those topics about eating, and maybe we can get into exercise a little bit and some mindset. And so that just for context, so hopefully that's what we can cover today. Is that cool?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I'm excited.
Fantastic. So just to give some context about who you are. So can you tell us just a little bit about your background and then what you do now?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I've been teaching some form of movement for the past 8 years. I would say probably a little longer if you count my minor league soccer coaching career.
Yeah.
But, I started my movement journey with yoga. And the more that I taught yoga classes, the more I realized that all of those yogis needed strength training. So then I went and learned how to coach strength training, strength and conditioning through CrossFit. And then once I was exposed to that, I was like, wow, all these people need yoga and stretching. And then, once I tried to blend all of that together, I also realized that nutrition was a missing link for a lot of these people. So I kind of try to get a certification in everything just to complete the circle on top of nursing. So yeah, I guess I've been doing movement for 8 years total, most recently strength and conditioning, a little bit of yoga here and there on the side. And then I've been doing nutrition coaching since last fall. I've been a registered nurse for 10 years now. 11 years now, which makes me feel super old. But I do that part-time in addition to the movement and the nutrition.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago when we met, and after CrossFit class, you would come in, you would do yoga, and everybody was just like groaning and in pain from doing a few minutes of yoga.
I know.
Yeah. And then you also got into like mobility. What was that? Supple leopards? Is that what you used to do?
Yeah. So I used to do like a 30-minute yoga for athletes, but it was more like mobility. It had, some yoga kind of disguised in there a little bit under the term mobility. Mm-hmm. So it was a little less scary, but then we would do like trigger point release, some banded distraction, more like long holds, connective tissue release, stuff like that.
Yeah. So point being that you understand the body, you understand movement, and then you mentioned, you kind of glossed over it a little bit, but you're a nurse. Like that's,
Yes.
You're in the health space as well. And we might not get into too much of that today, but I think you understand essentially the health and wellness side of humans.
Yeah, that's essentially what drove me to teach movement in the beginning. I was probably 3 or 4 years into my nursing career, and I realized there was just such a need for education in terms of prevention. I saw patients for such a short snapshot of time where, I can hand you a quick medication and, teach you how to inject insulin, but I really need more quality hands-on time with you to teach you how to put yourself in a situation where maybe, we can reverse, your need for insulin, or make some diet and lifestyle modifications that can prevent you from coming and seeing me in the hospital in the future. So that's really what drove me to learn the movement piece.
Yeah. And so for right now, I think you mentioned a little bit, but which services do you offer your wellness clients right now?
So right now, aside from strength and conditioning, if people have specific performance goals, we do a little bit of programming in that realm. But nutrition is kind of the main thing that I'm offering on a one-on-one basis. I do have some, mobility clients that have a lot of restriction and shortened range of motion that need some special TLC. But I also do nutrition, and that's kind of my primary focus. Anything from the athlete that just needs like a one-time calibration to make sure that they're hitting their, specific nutrient goals, to make sure their performance is optimized, to people who need a longer kind of hands-on approach to really walk them through, the weight loss space, or just optimizing how they feel.
Yeah. And I think just recently, I know you're always taking classes and learning, but just recently you got a certification through Precision Nutrition, right?
I did. Yeah. So it's to be a certified sports nutritionist is, I think, what the, proper term is called.
Which is, the way I understand it, not the easiest of certifications, but really a top-notch company. I mean, like
Precision is awesome.
Yeah.
I really kind of took my time deciding which certification I wanted to get. There's a lot of stuff out there. And I think that each person that you approach about nutrition is going to need something a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So Precision just had a really well-rounded approach. I appreciate the different options that they have for explaining optimal health to people. And it wasn't easy. I mean, took me probably 6 or 7 months, I think, to complete on top of everything else. Yeah. But definitely well worth it. I feel a lot more knowledgeable about it after completing the course. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. So then to start getting into some of the topics for today, again, so beginning of April. And so we're all under this sort of uncertainty about what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. And, many of us, or most of us, are under lockdown voluntarily or maybe imposed by our local counties. And to start getting into, let's call it wellness at home, what, as far as eating and exercising, why is it important for folks to continue or maybe even start some of these practices at home? Because I think for you and I, it might be pretty basic. Like, hey, you just continue to exercise or eat well, no matter where you are. But, I think we both have met a lot of folks who maybe they don't understand some of the reasons why this might be even a better time, a more opportune time to start getting to some of these good, healthy habits.
Sure. So, now more than ever, health is a number one priority. I mean, this is really a mirror to show us how important and vital it is to have as much control over our health and well-being as we possibly can. I mean, really, it's our number one defense. It's all we have, So it's just invaluable to take the time to learn what, the tools you need, I guess, to fill your toolbox in order to make this well-rounded, holistic individual that's prepared for all this stuff. Right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, everyone's stress is through the roof. Stress through the roof decreases your immunity. So, the focus and the intention is to put as much towards beefing up that immunity as you possibly can. So what better way to do that than with nutrition, with exercise, with meditation, with breathing, all these things that you and I know, that other people know are our best line of defenses, really.
Yeah. So let's put out a couple scenarios. He's doing great. It's like
she has a sock in the background. Guys, this is Eleanor. She's our newest family member, and I need to watch her at all times. So she's with me so that you wouldn't hear her yap in her crate.
Yeah. No, she's great. So with let's put out a couple scenarios. So let's say someone that, like some of our friends, like they consider themselves athletes. They work out in the gym with equipment, and they're physically healthy, and let's say their nutrition is doing well. I know I've talked to a lot of friends who are missing or maybe getting kind of depressed about not being able to do what we're used to and being in the gym. What kinds of things are you telling those folks, or some of them might even be your clients, just to be able to keep going? What kind of advice or suggestions do you have?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind to me is now is the best time to work on your weaknesses. I think a lot of our friends, our population, are used to being in the gym, strength training, the CrossFit athlete that's doing high level barbell stuff or gymnastic stuff, or just people that are used to having a lot of equipment. Now is a great time to really focus on quality of movement, on body weight exercises, on fine tuning your mobility, and really putting an emphasis into your nutrition. I mean, say this lockdown or this shelter in place lasts for, a total of 2, maybe 3 months. I mean, in the grand scheme of your strength and conditioning, career, if you want to call it that, you're not going to lose that much strength. And in fact, you could probably gain a lot of technique and come back to the gym moving better if you take this time to really focus on your weaknesses and really improve all of your body weight mechanics. I mean, there's endless amounts of body weight activity that you can do to, preserve the stimulus of working out, still create muscle hypertrophy, still preserve, endurance and cardiovascular health. I mean, there are endless options, really.
Yeah, I've been for the past few weeks. I don't know if I told you or you've seen, but I've been focusing on some of the Move You stuff. And like this morning, I was working on my scapula for like 15 minutes, which sounds like such a dorky thing to talk about, but it's, trying to take advantage that you don't have a lot of equipment, but I mean, work on weaknesses. Why not? This is a good time for it.
We got paper plates out of the kitchen, and we're doing mountain climbers and like trying to practice press the handstand sliding across the carpet floor, it's fun. And then, so what about someone else on the other side of the spectrum, in the sense that let's say someone that maybe doesn't have many healthy habits or physical habits, they don't work out too much, or maybe not at all. As far as eating, they might not eat very well. I've certainly talked to some of those folks where they say like, oh, well, what's the point? Like there's this constant, constantly getting further into this depression hole. So what kinds of things are you suggesting to folks like that? Yeah. So, the whole concept of inertia is always what I use as an example. An object at rest is going to stay at rest, and an object in motion is going to stay in motion. So, making that decision in the beginning to start moving is probably going to be the hardest one, but what better time than now, when you literally have no excuse? You're forced to stay inside, right? What better time to focus on laying a foundation for a better, healthier self? Just making the decision, choosing to stick with it, and then coming up with actionable goals. So, every single day for 30 minutes, when my feet first hit the floor, I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to do some body weight squats, or I'm going to focus on mobility and breathing. And then it's done. The hard thing is out of the way. You have the rest of the day, to move forward and do what you want with it. But a great way to look at it right now is to treat it like your job. If it's something that means enough to you, you really want to implement this habit, you want to make it stick for the long term, making that decision, doing it every single day, treating it like a job, and not giving yourself the option to not say no, or to say no, because again, this is a great example that we have to preserve our health. We have to invest in ourselves.
Yeah. I remember with PN, I took their lean eating program a few years ago. And I think it was the first habit that they talked about was the 5-minute action, where they said, pick anything to get you started on this journey that takes 5 minutes or less. Don't worry if it means cutting up one apple or doing one push-up, whatever it is,
Sure.
just to do something to get you started on that path. Because more than likely, you probably wouldn't stop at just that one. Let's say if it's a physical movement, you probably would not stop at just one push-up. You would say like, oh, well, I'm already down here. Might as well just keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. I already cut out this one thing, let me be mindful about the rest of the things that I'm eating for the day. Or I already ate one serving of vegetables,
Yeah.
Why not finish them off? Why not eat another? Absolutely.
So then let's see with, if we can talk about physical exercise for a little bit. Yesterday, I don't know if you want to show this. We can cut this out. You and John were doing some movements. It was like a roll, like flowing in the wind and whatnot. And so it's probably you guys experimenting and doing stuff at home, but with minimal space. What kinds of things could people start playing around with or experimenting with or moving?
So yeah, we literally have like a 1,300 square foot house. I mean, it's all one story. We have 3 dogs. We have a guest room, and we have like no backyard because, we live in Asheville.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know this is so embarrassing, but I just got to show you, like, the guest mattress is like pushed up against the wall, and this is just like the way that we're living right now. This is our new gym.
Yep.
And so for us, we are trying to keep it as playful as possible. I think we kind of fall into that category that you mentioned earlier, is like, we're so used to waking up, going to the gym, having everything we need right at our fingertips, doing a very specific type of movement, and then coming home. I mean, it's very calculated. So, like the rest of the world, the depression starts to creep in, we're isolated, we're here, we can't really go anywhere. That routine is taken away from us. So, we kind of anticipated that happening. We started to see it kind of creep in a little bit. So we sat down and made a very intentional plan. For me, my thought was, I've always wanted to be a more fluid mover. So I'm, used to doing strength and conditioning. I've done endurance running forever. Fluidity and like moving very seamlessly does not happen well for me. For John, it happens effortlessly, of course. He does jujitsu like 3 days a week, and he's always trying to get me to roll around with him, and teach me different chokes and holds and stuff like that. And I'm like, guy, this is not for me. I mean, I went to one jujitsu class and I literally punched myself in the eye in the first 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, I can see. I'm okay. I'm all right. So my goal was, okay, I'm going to become a more fluid mover. I want him to show me some rolls. I want to learn how to roll upside down on my neck and not feel like, panicked or uncomfortable. Just kind of leaning into what I typically shy away from has really helped me stay engaged, and kind of, fall in love with movement, aside from like, oh, well, I'm used to squatting with a barbell, and now here I am in my spare bedroom doing air squats, just picking a new type of movement and trying to, get as good at it as I can.
Yeah. I wonder if you see this maybe differently, but if doing something like that and throwing yourself into a certain type of discomfort, when you're used to a different type of movement or exercise, if that might make this, let's call it isolation or quarantining or lockdown, if it might make that a little bit easier because you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation on your own. Right. Like we're already told, like, hey, stay home for good reason. But by putting yourself into an additional uncomfortable situation, that might make things a little bit better because at least you have some control and you're doing something about what you're missing.
Yeah. And then you just can take that, outside of quarantine and let it bleed into the rest of your life. I mean, the whole game is getting comfortable with what you're uncomfortable with. I mean, that's life, leaning into it instead of shying away from it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, I just got an idea. Here's what I want to see you guys do. Have you seen the lava climbing? I forget what it's called.
No, I have not.
It's a couple exercise. And so one person, typically the taller one, will stand with their arms out and in like a quarter squat. And they can't move at all.
Okay. And another person goes around them?
Yes. It's
this
like they
is how
have to
I punch
go.
myself in the eye.
Oh, are you serious?
Because so it's called Around the World, right?
Around
and
the World,
John
yeah.
was out with all, in a quarter squat trying to brace me, and I had to get around him as many times. Can you see me still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had to get around him as many times as I possibly could without touching the floor.
Yeah.
And I made it around his stomach, and I was trying to like get onto his back, and I grabbed his gi, and I was like trying to turn, and I slipped, like I let go of the gi, and I just punched myself right in the eye. So I don't know if there will be a resurgence of that exercise. Maybe.
See, but you do it without the gi, right? I mean.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I told Katie that we'll do it tonight. It'll be all
right. Yeah, I want to see it.
All right. Somebody will get hurt. My neck's gonna be broken.
Uh-oh.
All right, let's talk about nutrition, eating.
Yeah.
Are there things that we should not be eating? Let's start there.
Oh, that's a loaded question. I believe that there is no food that should be restricted. I prefer to speak about food in terms of nutrient-rich food and less nutrient-dense food. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. And right now, honestly, we all know it. We're chasing serotonin. I mean, food provides serotonin, and we are in a time where we want to feel comforted. And for a lot of us, that means, familiar foods that we like to eat. That being said, I think that people should allow themselves to have, reasonable portions of their comfort food plugged into a well-structured, thought-out day.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's reasonable for you? Because that makes sense to me. But somebody will listen to this and be like, "Oh, honey, listen, Courtney gave me permission to eat this entire chocolate cake."
Yeah, baby, cook it up.
How do you find that balance?
So, I like to structure my food, making sure that I've got a protein, a vegetable, a serving of fat, throughout the day. Okay. That's my big priority: protein, fiber, vegetables. And then once I've had all of that, if I choose to have a comfort food or a serving of comfort food, that for me would look like, a handful of M&Ms after dinner, after I have my chicken and my veggies and, my healthy fats and stuff like that. Or, 1 or 2 cookies after dinner. Or if I felt like, skipping my chicken and veggies for lunch, maybe I just have a grilled cheese and that's just what I have, and then allowing myself to have that sort of, mental satisfaction, and then moving on and getting right back to regularly scheduled programming. Okay.
So eating the foods that are, let's say, good for you, and then afterwards having like a small treat or a small kind of indulgence without going overboard. Right.
Exactly. Okay. Yep.
And then let's see, as far as you talked a little bit about stress. I don't know if you are seeing this with your clients. I mean, certainly I see it with a lot of friends and family, myself. How do you recommend for your clients to manage their stress right now?
Well, first of all, I mean, this is like a shameless plug, I guess, but Headspace is free right now for all healthcare workers. So, and just in case people didn't know that, Headspace is a meditation app that you can use, and it's, again, free for all healthcare workers. And so I just went ahead and downloaded it and have been using it every single day right when my feet hit the floor. If you don't really feel like that, there's tons of different breathing exercises that you can look up on YouTube, breathing for relaxation, breathing for stress reduction. There's tons of great free content out there, or any sort of free meditation, honestly, on YouTube will be a great way for to start your day with stress reduction. I also think being proactive throughout your day, especially if you're, one of these people who have just suddenly lost all the structure that you have in your day. You are without job, you're home with kids. I mean, your wife does an amazing job of this, instead of sitting back and being reactionary and like, oh my God, my structure that I'm used to having is gone, again, leaning into what's uncomfortable and being proactive and creating your own structure, So from 8 to 9, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to take a walk, I'm going to come home, I'm going to meditate, and I'm going to breathe. And then I'm going to cook myself a nutritious breakfast, and then I'm going to read, just something to keep the pace, something to keep you moving in a healthy, positive direction, because obviously, this is going to pass and we're going to come out stronger, so just kind of priming yourself for that.
Yeah. It's tough to think about that while you're in it, but it'll pass. Right. And
absolutely.
Some of us will be okay. And unfortunately, some of us might lose a friend or a family member, hopefully not, but I guess that's the reality of it.
Absolutely.
At this point. But I believe in structure as best as you can. Like you mentioned, Katie, my wife, and she felt it for the first few days. Where we have a couple of girls, and they were just doing whatever. And I think we just did it, especially during the early days. We didn't know exactly what to do, so we're just like, oh, sure, whatever. We'll do a little bit of school and maybe some TV and whatnot. And then she just took it upon herself to set that structure. And it's not. She does give some leniency, but that's helped everybody. Even the kids appreciate it because they understand what's happening. Okay, at 9 we do this, and 11 we do that, and so on and so forth. And it brings some normalcy, which I think is what a lot of what we're missing.
Yes, absolutely.
Fortunately, I can come to the office for a little bit, and when I'm out on the road, I only see a handful of cars, and that's just so abnormal. It's just so bizarre.
I know, it's really crazy.
Strange.
It's really, really crazy. I know.
But it's what it is for right now. So, and then let's see. So you mentioned Headspace. Just to go back for a second, for exercising at home, have you seen any good websites or apps for moving at home?
Yeah. So one of the gyms that I coach for right now, they have given out virtual programs, like virtual online workouts for their members, which I've been doing a little bit of that. And that's really helpful just to come up with some ideas. And, aside from that, there's a million different like body weight WODs and stuff like that you can Google. And you can get free on the internet.
Is MAD putting out, if I am not a MAD member, can I see their workouts?
You can purchase. Well, you have to purchase them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's the URL if somebody wants to do that?
If you just go to @Madabolic, MADABOLIC on Instagram, I believe the link is in their profile, and they can look at that and see kind of what the deal is with those workouts.
Okay. Good deal.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's been really fun to stay connected.
And then what about for nutrition or eating? Is your profile public for Instagram?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So what's your handle in case somebody wants to follow? Because you always have a lot of really cool pictures of food. You've posted recipes and they all look delicious and they're very healthy.
Thanks. Yeah. It's Courtney and then 2 underscores. Sanford, SANFORD. And that's it. You can find me there.
Okay.
Direct message me. Yeah.
All right. You find some good food, exercise, shenanigans galore.
Yeah. Yeah. Us rolling around on the floor. Yeah.
Yeah. At first, Kitty and I were looking at it. We're like, what is happening? And then Kitty's like, let's do it.
Yeah. Everyone's like, has their different interpretation. Like, is the goal to not use your hands? And I'm like, no, it's kind of like a mixture of martial arts and yoga. And, we're just being big kids over here. That's really it.
Yeah, we need it. Let's see. And then, so I think we covered quite a bit as far as just, stress, some tips for eating well. I think it was helpful to kind of destigmatize the whole thing about eating treats or indulgences. I think a lot of folks, they have that kind of unsure about what to do. Like, should I cut out all my treats or should I have some? So I think that was helpful. What you mentioned, exercise. Is there anything else you think or that you want to mention for folks who are at home and they need maybe some guidance or some insights into how to eat or move or maybe some mindsets? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, man, thanks for the open-ended question, because I could literally just talk about this for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Now is a really great time to take a look at what your nutrition habits are. I saw this meme the other day that was like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but you just ate 5 minutes ago. And it made me laugh really hard because I have a tendency to just, I'm bored. I'm going to go eat. I'm bored. What's in the, I just looked in the refrigerator 5 minutes ago, but I'm going to look again. Maybe there's something in the back I missed. Mm-hmm. So now is a really great time to take a look at what your nutrition habits are, what your relationship with food is. We all have, areas for improvement. Like right now, for instance, I'm really trying hard to pay attention to my hunger cues. I have been one of those that has counted macros for the past 3 years, so much so to the point where I realized I was not paying attention to my hunger cues, and I was just eating because I had to get 30 more grams of protein in for the day.
Can you talk about that for a second? Because I'm familiar with that. So what does that mean? Like that you should, I think PN says, eat when you're hungry, right? Can you talk about the importance of that?
Right. Yeah. So, we all have a metabolism. I mean, it's a part of our, genetic makeup. And, if functioning appropriately, it's telling us when we're hungry and when it needs fuel. So, paying attention to that is almost like an art. I think there is so much that happens in day-to-day life. We've been so distracted with, work, emails, workout schedule, all these different roles that we uphold, that it's very easy to kind of ignore those hunger cues and forget that they even exist and just to get into a schedule. So really trying to focus on, okay, when I'm done with my meal, am I full? Am I still hungry? Am I just right? What is my body telling me? Eating slowly, making sure to fully chew my food, and then seeing how long it takes, before I'm hungry again. Waiting a little while before I choose to typically eat my next meal and see if I can actually, feel hunger, which, what a privilege that is to even say out loud. Like, I'm waiting to feel hungry. Like, gosh, that's awful. But, just paying attention to that, because I truthfully, as awful as it is to say, with counting macros for so long, I couldn't even tell you when I, felt hungry anymore. I was just on a rhythm, every 3 hours I'm eating. So it's been a fun challenge to kind of lean into.
And then it's what you said before about relationship with food. I feel like that's something we don't talk about too much. That's such an important thing to consider. And whether that's like in my family, when I was growing up, my mom would always say, finish your food. And that's become
absolutely
an automatic, response. So that related to what you're saying, eat when you're hungry, I would be eating, I would be full, but then I would see the food left on my plate. And I would have that reaction to well, I have to finish this. I can't possibly leave it. It's not like I have a fridge where I have space and, containers. I couldn't possibly just store it. So can you talk about that, the whole relationship thing? That's really important.
Yeah. I mean, we all have a relationship with food. Whether or not we sit on the couch and don't have, a high activity level, or whether we are working out 2 times a day and, 6 days a week, we all have a relationship to food, and it's all been shaped from the way we were raised, our parents' relationship with food. A lot of that requires some unlearning, so for me and for you, it sounds like you had to unlearn that whole mentality of eat every single thing that's on your plate. For some people, the relationship work is in, allowing yourself a little bit of grace if you maybe eat something that's not as nutrient rich as, chicken and vegetables, letting it go and not shaming yourself. And then, my, I guess, definition of a good, healthy relationship with food is, again, not saying any food that is good or bad or off limits or only acceptable, right? Food is an experience. It's meant to be social. It's meant to be emotional. It's meant to be cultural. It's meant to be purposeful, i.e. fueling yourself. It's meant to be healthful, meaning, we're eating it to work on disease prevention. And so making sure that all of those limbs of your relationship with food are in check. Am I eating socially on a regular basis? Am I allowing myself to eat out with friends when we're allowed to do that again, once every few weeks responsibly? Am I doing this as a way to fight disease and nourish my body, and give it what it needs? Am I allowing myself to have sugar, or have a food that maybe was comforting to me as a child, and then, letting it go and moving on without the shame. Just making sure to check in with all those pieces.
Yeah. I think if anything, if folks can pay attention to that and just, like you're saying, be mindful of what you're doing, what you're eating without judgment, which is really hard, right?
Yeah,
but at least just noticing, like, what am I doing? Why am I eating this? Or what am I eating? How much am I eating? And then just kind of decide if you want to do anything about it, or maybe at least just realize that you're doing that.
Right. Yeah. It's all about balance. You know, I mean, if we look at food as a way, ultimately, above all else, to nourish our bodies and to stave off disease, the rest will fall into place. If we're doing that 85% of the time, and making sure to preserve that other 15% to allow for the social experience, allow for the feel-good endorphins, allow for the cultural experience, who wants to go travel to a place and not try local food? I mean, come on, that's part of the experience, So just making sure all that in check is really, what I guess I would define as a healthy relationship with food.
Yep. Cool. Well said. So, all right, just to start wrapping up, is there anything you want to leave people with? Any calls to action or?
Maybe one more.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. We got time.
So I think it's interesting, right? Like, we're all trying to avoid going to the grocery store right now. We're all on lockdown at home, and we're like, oh my God, we need beans and toilet paper, which I guess the two definitely go hand in hand. But it's like, I'm just amazed at some of the, it's like every grocery store I've gone to, all the canned stuff is gone, but so many of the other more nutrient dense foods are still available. So just some ideas for having to, avoid going to the grocery store every few weeks. You can get almost any veggie frozen. If they're not frozen veggies, you can get heads of broccoli, you can get Brussels sprouts, you can get green beans. All can be frozen and preserved for as long as possible. I mean, you can go to the store and you can get your meats and your tofus and freeze them in bulk and have them and de-thaw them when you're ready to use. Frozen fruit makes great smoothies. There are tons and tons of ways to still maintain eating healthy without having to go to the grocery store every 4 days. So just some ideas with that, because I know the first instinct is to go for the jerky and the peanut butter and the rice cakes and call it a day, because you got all your main food groups there. But there are still a lot of really nutrient rich options that you can lean into without having to go to the grocery store regularly.
When Kitty and I used to live in Florida, and we would have these hurricane warnings all the time. And at the grocery stores, the first thing that would go would be milk and bread.
So crazy.
I'm like, wait a minute. So if you're buying that because you're afraid of being locked in your house and not being able to go to the store, that's the first thing that's going to go bad.
I know. It's so interesting. It's so interesting. I'm like, oh my God, I need my sumo oranges and my Brussels sprouts. And I'm spoken like a true Ashevillean, that goes to Whole Foods every 2 days. But
nice. Okay, cool. So, thank you, Courtney. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, how should they do that?
Instagram is great. Just at Courtney __ Sanford, SANFORD. You can direct message me there, and we can start a conversation. Nutrition, fitness, mindfulness, whatever you want.
Fantastic. Awesome. Courtney, thank you so much. I hope that folks get a lot out of this, and I will hopefully see you soon.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully sooner rather than later. Seriously.
Awesome. Courtney, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey guys, and before you go, this is Jason from Spectrum Labs. Please be sure to visit us on the web at thespectrumlabs.com for any show notes and links discussed in the podcast. Also, remember to click the subscribe button wherever you may be listening from so you get notified when our next episode comes out. And tune in next show and have a fantastic day.